Member from Nepean Carleton.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'm grateful to be part of this historic debate that I believe is going to fundamentally shape the way our Parliament and our government's cabinet interact moving forward. I think the previous speaker may be misinformed. It is within the people's interest that we have this debate. It is within the people's interest of this province that we find out how much of their hard-earned tax dollars have been mismanaged. Now, I've been listening intently, Speaker, to my colleagues from all political parties during this unprecedented situation. I've also listened to my constituents and many members of the public. In fact, Speaker, as the education critic, I've heard from many of those who are in teachers' unions wondering why, at a time where they've been vilified by this Liberal government and asked to take a pay freeze, of which we did support, would they actually have to watch this government effectively shred money. It's very difficult for people in the public to understand why $650 million and counting of their money has gone out the door with little, if nothing, to show for it. And it is clear, Speaker, that without a doubt that the cancellation of the Mississauga and Oakville power plants has cost those Ontario families hundreds of millions of dollars. As I said, and as many of my progressive Conservative colleagues have said, we are now estimating that this decision by the Energy Minister, the Liberal campaign team and the Premier has cost Ontario families $640 million. This is money that my constituents and many members of the public say could have been spent elsewhere. They say it could have been spent on MRIs. They say it could have been spent on other ways to help cancer patients. It could have been used in classrooms across Ontario. It could have been used for so many other reasons. But it is not, Speaker, because $640 million is now going out the window for cancellation fees and projects that will never see fruition. Speaker, that is very, very serious.
I think it's a little amount of money.
Speaker, it's also clear that in cancelling the power plants, particularly in Mississauga, those outside the traditional lines of decision-making in government, an unelected, unaccountable campaign team made costly decisions for the people of our province. Let's put this into perspective. People who work on campaigns are all tireless individuals. We all know that. And we respect volunteerism, particularly on political campaigns throughout the political spectrum, because those folks are hard to come by. They're diligent. They believe in something. However, they're not entrusted by people in this province to make those types of decisions of cancelling a power plant. First and foremost, that affects our energy grid. Secondly, it affects the money that people send to Queen's Park, that they expect will be used in a responsible manner. They expect members of a cabinet. They expect members of the Assembly, not members of a political campaign team, to make decisions about their money and power in this province. That in and of itself is a serious breach of trust. And if the member that just spoke from the Ontario Liberal Party cannot understand that, then maybe she should consider whether or not this place is her vocation or not. At the very end, Speaker, it is an inappropriate way.
I would suggest that we don't have any personal attacks on the member. It was kind of a bit of a stretch, so I would appreciate it if we would stick to the issue. Thank you. Continue.
Speaker, simply, this is an inappropriate way for government decisions to be made. It was a project that cost literally hundreds of millions of dollars. It was entrusted to this Assembly and, by extension, that cabinet by the people of Ontario, and it was sadly mismanaged. To make matters worse, the decision by the Liberal campaign team was made mere days before a provincial vote. We have a right in this Assembly to ask questions, demand documents, probe this situation. That is our responsibility in the official opposition. It is our responsibility to the people of Mississauga and Oakville and to the rest of the province to get to the bottom of whether or not this was a vote-buying scheme. We have an obligation to the people of Ontario to protect their money. We have an obligation to talk about this government's energy policy. Now, when members of this Assembly, most notably my colleague from Cambridge, Dr. Leone, sought information and sought answers from this government and its new minister on why the Liberal campaign team was, quite frankly, given extraordinary and exceptional powers over our electricity system, regardless of its cost to taxpayers, we rightly felt obstructed when that information was not given to us. We rightly felt in the official opposition, and I believe in the third party, obstructed, Speaker. We felt we were being denied relevant information for us to do our job. After all, we are in the opposition to keep an eye on the government. That is why we are here. I hate to break it to members of the government. But sadly, Speaker, I think after 9 years in office, they have forgotten why they're there and why we're here. And that is a sad testament. And that brings us to this point. We arrived at this point because the Energy Minister refused to adhere to the responsibilities that he was given through the Cabinet to this Assembly. He has a responsibility to give us information when it is requested through the committee structure. The Minister of Energy, and I want to make this very abundantly clear to members of the Liberal government, he had a choice. He had a choice he could have made. Chris Bentley could have shared those documents requested by Dr. Leone and others at the Standing Committee of Estimates. Or, Speaker, he did what he ultimately chose to do, which was refuse to hand over the documents and inhibit the committee's work, as well as members outside of that committee to do the work that they are expected to do, and get to the bottom of this multi-million-dollar scandal. Now, Speaker, again, he had a choice. He could have done the right thing, the honourable thing, what was expected of him at the Estimates Committee, and handed over those documents to Dr. Leone. He chose not to do that, Speaker. This is not the opposition's fault. It is the government's fault. It is the Minister of Energy's fault. He chose to do that. He made the decision. He should be smarter than that, Speaker. But he chose to do that. And we were left with whatever options we have in the opposition to get the information that we require. Had the minister made a better decision, and I have a 7-year-old, I know all about talking to children about good decisions and bad decisions, like taking a pair of scissors to school, and when your friend says, I want to have a fashion show, can we cut up the dress? That's a bad decision when your child decides to do that. Trust me, I know. That's a bad decision. I know what bad decisions are. And I hate to have to talk to the Minister of Energy as if he is my 7-year-old child. However, similarly to taking the scissors to school to cut the little girl's dress because they think it's a fashion show, his decision on the Mississauga power plants and then to conceal the information that we requested was a bad decision. And he, Speaker, had a choice. He had a choice, and it was a clear one. He could have made a better decision, and he would not have been in this spot. We would not be undertaking an unprecedented step today had he made a better choice. And he would not have been found in a prima facie breach by the Speaker of the Assembly had he made a better choice. But we are here because the rules of this Assembly allow that. The rules in this Assembly have been created to protect the tyranny of the majority for the opposition, for the minority, so that we are having abilities to protect our right to speak in this Assembly, to ask questions in this Assembly, to gather information in this Assembly. After all, that is why we've been sent here. So there is only one person that can be blamed for bringing us here to this day, to this contempt motion. And that, Speaker, is the Minister of Energy himself. Now, I've listened, as I said, intently to the debate. Members of all three political parties have had their opportunity to voice their displeasure of this unprecedented situation. I listened, for example, to the remarks of the government House Leader. He of the now famous quip that the Ontario Legislative Assembly is a kangaroo court.
Wow.
I think that that is probably the saddest commentary I've heard since being elected here, that the government's own House Leader would resort to calling a duly elected assembly a kangaroo court. Speaker, he should apologize to every member of this assembly for that transgression. He should be held accountable for saying that. That was the same member, Speaker, who said, and I quote, that there's been no redactions. There has been nothing hidden, no omissions. Well, Speaker, my staff member, Justin Ferguson, spent the last 3 days with another group of staffers from the Progressive Conservative Caucus. And I want to thank every single member of the Ontario PC Caucus staff team who went through those 36,000 documents. They have been here 24 hours a day the last 3 days. And you know what? Of just but two documents that I was given this morning are pages that say 18 pages redacted, not relevant. 31 pages redacted, not relevant. Speaker, that's just two documents of how many pages that have been redacted, over 36,000 documents. And that government House Leader has the audacity to stand in this place, call us a kangaroo court, and then lie to us and tell us that those documents were not redacted.
The member from Nepean Carleton will withdraw that word.
Thanks, Speaker. Withdrawn. But, Speaker, I also concentrated my remarks, on the remarks by the Attorney General, the successor to the Minister of Energy. He wants this whole distasteful mess just to go away.
Yep.
He just wants to go to sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow, and talk about some fluffy, happy thing. Maybe, Speaker, it's about wind turbines on Wolf Island. I don't know. But that's what he chose to do, and I think that's really nice. I think that's really simplistic. And, Speaker, I think that's incredibly naive. Because, as I have said, his predecessor had a choice, a very clear choice. It was hand over the documents or obstruct and stall. He chose the latter. He made a choice. We're here because of your colleagues' choice. Now, I agree, every member here comes to this place for the same reason. We want to do well for the people of Ontario. We want to put them first. We may have different ideas on what that is and how to make life here in Ontario better. But at the end of the day, right from wrong is pretty damn clear. Speaker, he had a choice. Hand over the documents or obstruct. He chose obstruction. And as much as I wish the Minister of Energy and the Minister of and the Attorney General in their life outside of this place, and even in this side of this place, I must say it's incredibly naive to think that we can gloss over this historic breach of parliamentary trust. We can't just do that because you want to. We are obligated to have those fulsome debates.
600.
Now, I also listened, Speaker, to the Minister of Environment. Now, he was interesting because he decided to spend a lot of time name-dropping Conservatives. And he also name-dropped a lot of New Democrats, to be fair. And he said, oh, my goodness, these Conservatives would just be so upset that today's Conservatives would be doing this. Well, I can tell you, Speaker, I was sitting in a caucus meeting yesterday when one of the name-dropped Conservatives he was talking about sent another one of my colleagues a note and said, you know what, we should not only have these guys in contempt, we should have a confidence motion and boot them out. Because I got to tell you, the Conservative family in Ontario has never been more united. The Conservative family in Ontario is ready to govern this province. The Conservative family in this province would never do what this government did and sacrifice $650 million of taxpayer money for what you've done and put our energy grid in Ontario at the brink. Because you have put more politics into our power system than any government in the previous incarnations. So to the Minister of Environment, who used to be a government House Leader, I must say, Speaker, I was never more displeased from hearing from someone who I consider a statesman in this House want to gloss over a situation as serious as the one before us. Let's put this again into perspective. It is a chaotic mess at their government's own doing. They did this They had a choice. It was they who made the campaign decision to cancel the power plant. It was they who wasted $650 million and counting on a politically motivated, election-driven decision. It was they who refused to hand over the documents to this Assembly when those documents were requested. It was they who were found in breach of the rules when they refused to hand over the documents. And it was they who redacted, omitted, and hid documents once the Speaker ordered that they comply. Speaker, it is very clear we are here because of them. And I showed you the pages, Speaker, of those pages that have been redacted. And I am reminded again of the words of the government House Leader who said to us that they weren't redacted. Well, they were, Speaker. I know that he likes to play with the truth, but there you have it. But after all, Speaker, it is they, and I cannot say this enough, who are responsible for this contempt motion. Now, to the Attorney General's point again, we all want to do what's best for the province, but in this case, you and your government failed utterly and miserably. Now, I cannot answer why the Minister of Energy, the Liberal campaign team, or the Premier made the decisions that they did. I can speculate that it was more about winning seats in the GTA than it was about good energy policy here in Ontario. I can speculate that it was more about winning seats than it was about bringing affordable energy to the seniors in my riding who are having a very difficult time paying for it. And I think it was more about winning seats in the Ontario Legislative Assembly than it was about their so-called Pride and Joy green energy program. Now, I cannot answer why the Minister of Energy, why the Premier and the Liberal campaign team chose to withhold documents from the government, the Standing Committee on Estimates. But I can speculate, Speaker. I think it was because they didn't want to be caught mismanaging our energy system
Again?
at the expense of about $650 million at a time when we're asking teachers and doctors and every other public servant to take a wage freeze, which we support. But my gosh, it's awfully hypocritical when you go out and I'm going to send the Minister of Finance a shredder just so we can start shredding the money.
The member will withdraw the one word, please. It's on par.
Withdrawn, Speaker. I can't answer why the Minister of Energy, the Liberal campaign team, or the Premier thought it was a good idea to redact, omit, and further hide additional documents after the Speaker's ruling. But again, Speaker, I can speculate. And again, that's why we're here. Well, I think they don't want to get caught, to the colleague from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. I think they want to contain this embarrassment. Speaker, you have to understand, after 9 years of office, this government has become incredibly entitled. They find the opposition and any stakeholders or communities that are opposed to their agenda as irritants. They're incredibly arrogant. They're incredibly entitled. And that is why we have had to pursue this rare, unique, and unmatched situation at the Assembly. This hasn't been done in over a century, and that's for good reason, Speaker. Because any responsible opposition, like the one Tim Hudak is leading in the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, is going to take its time, do its due diligence, and make sure that we get this right. This is an extraordinary measure because these are extraordinary times. You cannot just take $640 million and put it through a shredder and expect the people of Ontario to ignore that, and expect the people in the opposition to roll over. You can't expect that, Speaker. These are two important times. We have to get our economy back on track. We cannot afford to mismanage more money. And, Speaker, at a time when we're assaulting rural communities, just like mine in North Gore, with wind turbine developments that aren't wanted, this government decides to play fast and loose with the facts on a major power station in Mississauga and a major power station in Oakville. Now, we want to talk about people, like the previous speaker did from the Ontario Liberal Party, and putting people first, then she would understand that this decision by our caucus and the third party is an important one, because we have the right to get that information. We have the right to ask those questions. We have the right to speak on behalf of the people who feel so disenchanted by this government. And, Speaker, we're going to continue to do that. Now, I would expect after today that this Liberal government will hand over those redacted, omitted and hidden documents and give them to Dr. Leone's committee and send this immediately to Finance Committee so that we can get to the bottom of it and find no more surprises and know once and for all how much money they have wasted. Thank you.
Thank you.